Hello, everyone. This is Rolo coming to you live. It's been an extremely long time since I've done. Well, it's been a few weeks since I've done a rant, and I haven't been consistent about it. But I was planning on going live earlier this week. Just to discuss everything that was going on with that young woman, Arena, that was murdered in North Carolina. And then everything pretty much changed. The week got a lot worse. And I think a lot of people I felt so many different emotions going through all of this week, and I think that in my generation, I'm 38 years old, so I'm not old, but I'm not young. I'm certainly not as young as Charlie Kirk was, and which is really crazy. But for years I've talked about a lot of different things, in the political space, Second Amendment, things like that, freedom, my own journey in the last couple of years with my faith, and I think that what I really saw this week, in hearing about Charlie. I didn't watch him as much as, a lot of other commentators. I never had the chance to meet him. But, I always had that kind of one degree of separation just because of people that I knew that worked with Turning Point, that had met him before and talked about how awesome he was. But the one thing that really struck me, and I think that this is part of why this has impacted, one of the reasons why this has impacted so many people in a different way than I've seen other events and other experiences like this. Even what happened to President Trump, the first thing that everybody that's close to Charlie says, they don't talk about his oration skills, his intelligence, his politics. They talk about his faith and the fact that he was a devout Christian and that he truly knew that Jesus Christ was his savior. And I think that, when somebody is described that way above, even being a father and his achievements in creating Turning Point USA first, when I heard Sage Steele talk about that, of all people, and she mentioned that for years she'd been afraid to speak out about her faith and about her beliefs, and that Charlie helped her overcome that fear. Seeing what Gina Carano had posted today about how Charlie had encouraged her and gotten her to overcome her fear of speaking at that event that she was at. And it was beautiful and poignant. And so many people really talked about that fearlessness that Charlie had, the boldness and the compassion and the empathy. And that's what makes this so different than other things that we've experienced. And in my lifetime, which granted hasn't been that long, but you can see so many things that happened. We had the World Trade Center bombing in '93, going through the scandals and the terrorist attacks at embassies and barracks, the USS Cole, then September 11th, and everything that entailed with the war on terror. The division that we saw throughout the Obama years and how it's culminated in what we have today, and how at every turn, it seems like we give and give and give, and it becomes more difficult. And so many people were afraid to speak up. And Charlie really was the probably the most prominent voice in my generation and people that were younger that really took up that mantle of fearlessness to get up boldly and speak in front of people, and really stuck to it, because we've seen other people do it. Crowder, Ben Shapiro, countless others. We know plenty of people that we've seen, cover protests and put their, safety on the line to cover the chaos that's been ensuing in this country for the last, a couple of decades, really, and even longer than that, if we want to really go to the crux of everything that we're seeing. But that's really why this hurts so much. And the boldness, how blatant it was, the fact that a man of Christ, a father, a husband, somebody who was meeting our intellectual, political, and ideological adversaries in what essentially amounts to their church, the university, is really where the left and all of their ideas really emanate from now, and where it has. And not being afraid to expose himself the way he did. And what, they answered, they could not rebut him in debate, so they had to silence and kill him. And that's where that's ultimately what they resorted to. And it is so appalling. We're used to, violence against different types of people. Like I said, had something happened to President Trump and Butler, this country, we would not be here the way that we are today. We would not. This country probably would have ceased to exist. And who knows where we would have been. But there's just something that I've seen the change finally, that for years, and it's awful that this is what it took. It is absolutely awful that this is what it took. But now people can see what has been going on. And it was always out in the open, but it's just escalated and escalated and escalated and escalated. And, things are now have changed. And like I mentioned earlier, and I apologize if I'm not completely cohesive with everything that I say, because this is still raw. I didn't want to go live the last couple of days because I had so much rage and anger, and I had to reconcile that with needing to keep a cool head in situations like this, reconciling it with my faith as well, and even what Charlie himself espoused, but seeing the reaction en masse has been, even for me as somebody who for years has been ranting, has been talking about how evil the left is and what they've done and who they collude with, and even the spiritual aspect to all of this and the darkness that comes with it, and seeing the evil throughout the world, that this ideology and this amalgamation of insanity has wrought for decades, because we've seen this happen in other countries, and they fell apart into chaos, authoritarianism, destruction, and evil. We still felt that, especially with some of our victories, and we should have known better. We should have known better. Even that after everything that we overcame and what we saw them try to do to us, or anybody that had an ideology of freedom and common sense, let alone being a person of faith on top of those things, just a person that wanted to be left alone and have a decent job and be able to start a family and own a home without being bothered and being beaten over the head with an ideology that is absolutely, utterly demonic and insane. And it wasn't enough. It was not enough to just look the other way and ignore people. Like, whatever you do in your home, as long as it's not illegal and you're not hurting anybody, I really don't care. Go ahead and do whatever you want. Especially my generation, the younger generations, they chipped away at that. And we became more and more forgiving and open and empathetic. And eventually it was completely taken advantage of, because that's what it was. It was the slow boil. It was cracking, finding the cracks in the armor, slowly trying to get us to capitulate. And ultimately it was a tactic of demoralization, because they used our empathy against us and it became utterly toxic. And it started with, what was the moderate left, or whatever you want to call it, 90s Democrats, people that were still patriotic, but maybe they believed in welfare and, free healthcare and things like that. They weren't socialists. They weren't communists. They didn't hate the flag. They didn't hate this country and our history and our legacy. And then slowly, they became ideologically poisoned, because for years our enemies had infiltrated us from the university system, through our businesses, through every facet. And as freedom-loving people and conservatives, we surrendered those things because we became so obsessed with our individualism that we had blinders on, and we stopped paying attention. And we said, we don't need to pay attention to the arts. We don't need to get into academia. We don't need to be involved in government, because we want a smaller government. So it would be hypocritical for us to get involved in it. And we had good faith, because most of our neighbors, most of the people around us, they at least gave us the illusion of goodness, of morality, of godliness, of caring. But over the years, those foundations, that trust has been eroded, first with the government, then through all of our institutions, our culture, and then finally, the people around us slowly got poisoned by it. So, and then we just woke up one day and this is where we were. And now it's like, what do we do? What do we do when one of the best of us has been slain in such a horrific way publicly, and so many around us take glee in it? And I think that's the shock that people are seeing. You're seeing multiple emotions here, and I don't know the path forward. I've had to reconcile a lot of thoughts in my mind and think about these things and wonder to myself, what should we have done different? What can we do different going forward? Is it too late? And so this has all been going around my head. Thank you, Josie, for the gifted subs. I'll get to that with super chats and everything later, but I appreciate you. We had shock, sadness, despair, anger, and fear, and all of these emotions at once, a desire for justice, vengeance, everything, all of these things swirling in our heads, rage, and helplessness to an extent. And, I want to start with something, and I think that this is appropriate. And I went over this. I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to overcome the fear, and that doesn't mean that we're afraid of our adversaries or anything like that, because we know that they're insane and they're evil, and we can stand up against them. But it's the unknown and the shock that even some of our own friends and neighbors, it seems, have taken glee to this. It's not just these crazy people that we know are probably mentally ill on the internet. It seems to be everywhere, like it's permeated everything. And so we need to find solace. And that is something that Charlie always preached about, his faith. So I do want to say this prayer, And, it's also, again, we can't be afraid to speak out about what is meaningful to us, what is important, and to find solace. And I've seen so many people going back to their faith or looking for their faith or being inspired for the first time. And I went through that journey. I've always believed, but the last 2 years of my life with things that happen have really brought me to the Lord. And I think it's very important, and it's inspiring to see someone like Charlie lead that call. We need to do it. We need to stand up and we need to speak. So this is a victory over fear. Father, when I am afraid, I will put my confidence in you. Yes, I will trust your promises. And since I trust you, what can mere man do to me? You have not given me a spirit of timidity, but of power and love and discipline, sound judgment. Therefore, I am not ashamed of the testimony of my Lord. I have not received a spirit of slavery leading to fear again, but I have received a spirit of adoption as a son, by which I cry out, Abba, Father. Jesus, you delivered me, who through fear of death had been living all my life as a slave to constant dread. I received the gift you left to me, peace of mind and heart, and the peace you give isn't fragile like the peace of the world. I cast away troubled thoughts, and I am not afraid. I believe in God. I believe also in you. Lord, you are my light and my salvation. You protect me from danger. Whom shall I fear? When evil men come to destroy me, they will stumble and fall. Yes, though a mighty army marches against me, my heart shall know no fear. I am confident that you will save me. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for bringing these things to my remembrance when I am tempted to be afraid. I will trust in my God. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. And so we have to stand up against the fear. And we can't be afraid to give our testimony and to let people know why we stand for what we stand for. And we now can see what is all around us. And that is shocking for so many people. And I've seen it. I've seen it from so many. And you can also see the fear that's been stoked on the other side, because now they know that there's been a line that's been crossed and nobody knows what's going to happen next. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. But I can tell you something. We have to look inward, because for years I've talked about how, and I'm just a small voice. There's other people who've said this more eloquently than me, Charlie and a multitude among them. But we as freedom-loving individuals, conservatives, whatever you want to say, people of common sense, good people that just, we work and we try to live our lives to the best of our abilities and, pray, go to church, and just, try to do our best to pay our bills and, enjoy what we can. It's, for the first time, you can just see, COVID, all of these other things, they led up to this, and we saw some of it, but we really didn't do anything. We don't protest. We don't boycott. We tried to be better. For years, we tried to be better, but it wasn't better in the sense that we weren't going to stoop down to their evil or to use violence. It's that we felt like doing nothing at all was being better. We were completely passive. We did not even compete. The left took over all of the institutions, and many of us, for decades, this goes back beyond even many of the people in this chat, we took for granted, we gave away our control and our sovereignty because part of it was laziness and convenience. The other part was we had good faith and we trusted, because we always believed in the foundational principles of this country, of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the fact that we were founded on the principles of Christianity. And we believed in all of that. But for years that had been eroded, it had been taken advantage of, and we lost our own faith when we became consumed within ourselves, either purposefully because of our own greed or because life, everything that modernity has given us strips us away of time from our family and those that we care about. Yes, we have modern conveniences that kings of even 100 or 200 years ago could never have imagined, even a person who's living in near poverty in an apartment. But despite all of that, we just, we became passive, and they slowly took advantage of everything. They being our adversaries, foreign and domestic, politicians, people of greed, corporations, everything, because we replaced God in every level of our institutions. And so we lifted humanity and our laws and our desires above everything else. We took something that was eternal and true, and we replaced it slowly at every level until we forgot what that meant, and it has become chaos. And then once we destroyed that sacredness, there was nothing else. A piece of paper, the Constitution, all of that was never going to stand, and they knew it. And they made us ignorant in our schools, everywhere. They don't teach us civics. They don't teach us the law. These are the things that Charlie and so many others espouse. This is why when he got into debates, he dominated everybody, because they had no knowledge about what this country was supposed to stand for and why everything is wrong. It is all wrong because it is by design. It is by design. They've eroded all of the trust. They've eroded everything that we stand for. They've even eroded the very definition of men and women, and they have infiltrated at every level. And we didn't see it at first. We gave up our sovereignty. We thought we were being nice, and we paid the price for it. And so now they have been running basically unopposed against us for decades. So now, for the first time ever, and this is why they're afraid. They're not necessarily afraid because they think that there's going to be some sort of vengeance and retribution in kind to what happened to Charlie. No, they are afraid because they know that from this moment going forward, from people like you and I that may have already been in tune and understood what the stakes were for years, to every single normie that never paid attention to anything that's been going on, now everybody is awake, they're shocked, and they're engaged, and they will never turn back. For the first time ever, all of us are going to tell them, no, 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 we will not stand for any of this anymore. No, we will not be afraid. No, we will not accept their insanity. No, we will not accept when they call us racists, fascists, bigots, whatever name under the sun. We will not be intimidated. When they yell at us, when they scream, when they try to take away our rights, even when they come with us at the barrel of a gun, we will say no, because we have stood here for decades and we have not said no. And for the first time, we will stand our ground and we will say no to everything that they stand for. We will expose them at every corner. The tactics that they use, they canceled us for standing up to our principles. They are going to lose their jobs because they wish us harm and death. And that is the difference between us and them, because our cause is right and it is righteous, and they have been consumed by hatred and evil, and we will say no. And most of them have never had to stand up to that word. And that is powerful. That is what we have needed to do, because a strong men, a strong society, independent men and women know when to say no. They don't let children and insaniacs and the demonic forces of evil to overrun their society. They say no, not one step further. This is where it ends. This is where we stand. That is where it is. And we will say no. And if they keep pushing back, if they keep forcing, if they keep trying to destroy us and remove us from this planet, they will know that we will say no, and they will ultimately lose everything. And they already are, and that is why they are afraid. They are afraid because they know that it is over. And you can see it. You can see that it is over. The mask has been removed. We know exactly who they are. We know exactly what they stand for, and we are never going to allow them to push us any further. And so that is what we have to do. We expose them at every corner. We show up everywhere. We become involved. And ultimately, we cannot stand by the sidelines. Whether we believe in a small government or not, the only way that we have influence on it is if we are involved in it. And so we have to take control of the institutions and of the moral message here. And we have to tell them no. We will not accept what they stand for. We will not accept their behavior, their insanity, and their intimidation. We will not accept it. No. And that is where we have to go here. We don't have to resort to everything that they do. We are disgusted by them, and we will make sure that they are called out on it, and there will be a price. People are going to lose their jobs. They need to be shamed. They need to be ostracized. They need to be voted out. And at every turn, we need to say this is unacceptable. And that doesn't violate our principles of freedom of speech. It doesn't violate our principles of due process. None of it does. It does not. It does not. And there needs to be justice. There has to be justice for Charlie Kirk. The person that killed him has to be held to account, no matter what. And it has to be to the fullest extent, because what has happened here was heinous, unacceptable, and it was right there for all of us to see nakedly. And we saw the celebration from the left and the insanity that they had, this evil force. And this is what we're fighting against. This is what we have to push back against. And we cannot quit. No. And anybody, this is a moment where, yes, this will cause division. There is no doubt. There is no doubt. I don't know where this is going to go, and I understand. I felt so much rage and anger the last few days. I felt rage and utter anger, righteous indignation at what happened. And what happened to Irina, the young woman who was murdered in North Carolina, and the rampant crimes, countless others, what we've seen for years, and it all culminates to this. They've tried to destroy our country, our livelihood, and they have turned such a huge portion of our population against us and against themselves. That's the thing. They can't help themselves. They cannot help themselves. They can't. Man, I've broken out in sweat. Give me a second here. Temperature literally went up like 20 degrees in here. Just so we have to be better than them. We have to be better than them. It is going to be difficult, and every single moment when we go on social media, I completely understand. I completely understand. The desire for how we feel and what has been going on here. I'm going to bring the chat back in, or everything here. And but at the same time, we cannot lose what we stand for. But now it will, what they did with Charlie is, he is more powerful than he ever than ever before. It really is, you know, not to use the cliche to downplay, but it is like Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was martyred for his faith and for everything that he stood for. And that's not a word that we can use lightly, but that is exactly what happened to him. He was martyred because of what he believed in and what he stood for. And it could have been any one of us, these last few years that stood up to the injustices that we saw from all of this, from the cancel culture, from them trying to destroy everything that we believed in, trying to separate families, you know, with these ideologies and destroy them, take children away from parents just because they didn't want them to transition. You know, people being murdered by criminals who are brought in here illegally, gang violence, insanity that we see in the streets, and this depravity and the banality of evil. I think between seeing the cowardice of people on that light rail as that woman bled out after she was stabbed, and I've learned it's too much to expect people to get physically involved. I hate to see that cowardice. We don't have enough Daniel Pennies in this world. But to not even go to somebody when they are dying and show compassion and try to be there for them as their life is fading away from them. That is the banality of evil. That is what has happened here. That's the trust that's been eroded. It's not just in government, it's in all of us. They have destroyed our souls. So many of our fellow countrymen's souls have been destroyed. And I think that's what we see. And that is why this is so awful and why it hurts so much, and why, yes, we felt the fear, but we have to stand up against the fear. That is why we have to pray, and we do have to circle the wagons. Ultimately, that is what we need to do. And I'm a typical, look, I can be pretty cynical. I have a lot of faith, and I also know that I know that we are in difficult times because we've had weak men lead us here. These are the hard times that they speak of. I don't know if these are the end times in a biblical and spiritual sense, but it does feel, you know, like the days of Noah a lot, the depravity that we're seeing throughout the world, the evil that we're seeing spread, the hate, it's everywhere, and it's a naked, illogical hate, and that's how you know it is demonic. That's how you know. And I've seen so many people say that they weren't sure that they were believers, but they finally believed in evil. Well, if you believe in evil and you understand how it spreads and that there's no logic behind it because it is a spiritual force, then there is good. You have to know about the light. So, but you're seeing the lies, the obfuscation, how the media, the politicians are washing their hands and trying to deflect. The elites, all of them trying to deflect and not take responsibility for creating an environment where things like this were inevitable. And we'd already been seeing it happen. And the restraint that we have shown as libertarians and conservatives, people who we own more firearms, probably 3-1 at least, compared to many of these people. And we get spit on, we get punched in the face, and we we've turned the other cheek too much. And you know, turning the other cheek, I don't think that, you know, it really means that we allow ourselves, you know, to be victimized. It means that we stand there. So we take it. We take it, we stand firm, and we never go back. So they may strike us, but we never kneel. We only kneel before our God, nobody else. That is it. And especially not to some sort of demonic, insane ideology. No, we'll never do that. No. No, we absolutely don't. So we're in uncharted waters. We really are, because we've never had so many people who've been shocked into being awake, and some people are like a deer in the headlights when that happens. Other people, they just completely lose it and they become enraged. And many of us that have been holding for so long, we've become enraged, and we have to show restraint here. But again, now we say no. Now we say no. And obviously, if they continue to escalate, then there's a point of inevitability where there's nothing you can do. If the other side resorts to, that's it, there's no conversation. And are we too far gone? I don't know. I've been saying, I've used this metaphor for a while, and I'm sure I've said it in the past in this rant, in a rant before, or somewhere or other, or I go on rants, you know, with my family and friends all the time. So sometimes I lose track of whether I told it to you guys or it was there. It's just all raw and it's all the same anyway. I don't hold back, but America is, we're in final stage cancer, or late stage cancer. That's where we are. And we've known that we've had this cancer for a long time. And we caught it early and we didn't care. We just kept going on. We'll be fine. It kept spreading. It kept spreading. It kept spreading. And now it is everywhere. And there are no good options. There are no good options. There's going to have to be, parts of our body are gone. They're gone. There are elements where there is no reconciliation. We can see it. It's an evil that's permeated, and there is no reconciliation. And I think that's what has been so stark about this. We see people that are teachers, nurses, doctors, people in the military, all walks of life, that have shown how consumed they've become, and that they want their political adversaries to suffer and die. That's what we've seen. Normal people in positions that we would trust, not politicians, not celebrities or the elites, not our foreign adversaries. Jane and John Doe, or Jane and John Smith across the street. That's who we're seeing. That's who we're seeing. It's not just the blue-haired, trans, furry crazies that we've seen all the time. It is literally normal people that we thought were normal. And they're everywhere. And so that is the obstacle that we face. There are more of them than we ever imagined, but now there are more of us than we've ever imagined. And I do think, and I do believe in my heart, that there are still many more of us than there are of them. And that many of them are also consumed by the power that they feel that they derive from social media. And you can see that from the reaction of when these people are taken to task and they face consequences for the evil that spews out of their mouth, and they lose their jobs. And you can see how completely unprepared they are for that. And how that's it. The tough guy attitude goes away. So that's what we're seeing. But again, we can't underestimate our adversaries. There were so many people online right after this happened where they're like, this must have been a professional hit. Now, obviously, look, with anything like this, there's always going to be a little bit of weirdness. But from personal experience, from somebody that has been in the Second Amendment community for a while, I'm not a professional. I've been a civilian my entire life. My degree's in engineering. I wasn't in the military or anything like that. I have plenty of family that was in the military, but it's not like they were, special ops or anything like that. They served, honorably and were proud of their service. But, it wasn't, I didn't come from a gun family or a hunting family or anything like that. So, but I've received training and I've been around people who are professionals, whether they were law enforcement, professional trainers, or, ex-military and the like, competition shooters. So people who are proficient with guns, and also people who have just been around guns their entire lives, people that have hunted. And you can see that you can become decently proficient with a firearm, especially a rifle, at the ranges that we saw. And the thing that continues to drive me crazy is somebody who, one of my other hobbies and passions is aerial videography, flying drones. I cannot for the life of me. There are so many people that are like, we need more security. Now we're afraid. We don't want to do outdoor events. Both in this circumstance and in Butler, Pennsylvania with President Trump, $100 or $300 drones would have made those situations completely go away. And that is something that we have to keep in mind going forward, because it wouldn't take a lot. It's unacceptable that people are able to get on rooftops when prominent people are speaking. That should never happen. And you don't even need that much security. A drone is a security multiplier in these situations. So that's something that we have to keep in mind going forward. There are lessons that we do have to look at for ourselves and for events going forward, because we also don't want to be intimidated. That is exactly what this is. This was terrorism. This was an act of evil, and it was an act of terrorism. It was an assassination, a political assassination, and an act of terror. And so we cannot allow terrorism like this to shut us down and to shut us up. It doesn't mean that we're stupid. Obviously, we have to take precautions. We cannot underestimate our foes and laugh at every person that we see online that we think is a loser because there's some scrawny loser or some fat person or a crazy trans person or furry or whatever. No, some of these people are dead serious. And we've seen that some of them are soldiers, law enforcement. This is an evil that permeates, and it goes through every level. By many accounts, this man that murdered this monster, this terrorist, he had a fairly normal life. So what radicalized him? And the fact that something can radicalize somebody that quickly to do evil, that can infect them, that tells you everything about its source as well. It creates a nihilism and a hatred. It's a godlessness effect. And when you have nothing to live for and you're fueled by nihilism, that's it. You've got nothing to lose. This can become a single-minded purpose. And that's not to say that some of these circumstances, we got to question what happened with President Trump. We still don't have all the answers to that, and that's BS. So obviously there are forces involved in some of these cases where it could be some sort of deep state plot or a foreign adversary or a professional hit. But it's also just as easily somebody who's gone crazy and is consumed by evil and hatred, because it's not that difficult when you're with some training. If you know the ground and you know that there's no security and you can't be seen from above, and that's it. It's too easy. It's too easy for them to succeed in some of these circumstances because we've become almost too arrogant, but at the same time, we don't need to shut everything down and be afraid, because there are a few things that we can do to prevent things like this from happening in the future. So, this is, these are things that we have to do going forward. We have to have eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. I've said it a million times here. It's on the side of the National Archives. You know that it is one of my favorite quotes because it covers it all. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. We don't want a surveillance state. We don't want to live in fear. That is where terrorism wins, because then eventually, when the leaders that we have right now, the ones that we support, like President Trump, J.D. Vance, and others, and they've disappointed us in other ways, but they've shown, that they're standing up to a lot of these forces. If they're not in office one day, we can't, in a desire for vengeance or trying to prevent everything fear, we can't give up our rights either. But now we're paying attention. That is the absolute difference. So, and we have to go to these institutions. We can't give colleges money anymore when they're spewing this hate. We've seen it with these Hamas and these pro-Palestinian jihadist movements and the money that flows into them from these left-wing organizations. And I'm glad that they're finally going to try to use RICO charges to take down Soros and some of these organizations, because they've been taking advantage of our legal system. It is unsustainable when our legal system can be completely undermined by rogue district attorneys and rogue judges, and there's no accountability. Our system of justice and government cannot stand. It will completely crumble and fall apart because we've lost all faith in these institutions, and the country will not function if we don't do something about that and hold these people accountable. And it's not going to require oppression or injustice or anything like that. The freaking Constitution has a lot of the tools, but we've been so afraid, and I'm so sick and tired of people on the right saying, and I used to be one of them, so because years ago I was this milquetoast, nice guy, conservative dude. You're getting rolled all the time. That's what happened. We got rolled. That if we do certain things, the left is going to do everything. That is what the left does. They're not just authoritarians. They are totalitarian. They are nihilists. They are oppressors. They don't believe in anything that we believe in or that we stand for. They hate all of it. They will take it away from us one way or the other, and they've been completely exposed now. Now you can see it, because this goes from top to bottom. Now it's your neighbors that believe in all of this. So at this point, it doesn't matter. We have to wield the power that we have right now to make sure that their ideology is completely discredited, and we prevent them from gaining more and more power, because they will wield it against us. They will absolutely wield it against us for too long. And look, there are evil people within the Republican Party. We know this. We know that the two parties collude. I'm just pushing more left and right, because really at this point it's God-fearing and or decent moralistic people that have common sense, that want to be left alone, that believe in rule of law versus chaos. That's really where we're at. Chaos and insanity. And anti-humanism and anti-nature. Let's be honest, when we're really thinking about it. Anti-reality. That's what we're dealing with now. And so we have to stand firm against them, and we have to use all the power that we have legally. So does that mean, yes, people are going to get canceled? They are going to lose their jobs. Their reputations must be destroyed. And I don't think that we can have a national divorce. I think we're too far gone from a national divorce. I know that's something that people want to speak to, but think about this. And many of you would feel this way too, because I know a lot of you are in blue states right now. You've lived there your entire lives. You may live in a beautiful area that your family has had land for decades, and you have a house that's paid off, and you have all of this, and you don't want to leave. How are you going to convince people There's really no state that's like 80-20 or some extreme imbalance of population between conservative and I even hate to use the word liberal because they've perverted it and used it, but between left and right leaning people. It's like 60-40 at the most in most states, even in California or New York. So how would you split this? How are you going to split that? You're not, because people are not going to give it up. They're not going to give it up on either side, and it's everywhere. Like everything is purple. That's where we're at. So I don't know how you do. There will be resistance. You'll have people on our own side who said, hell no, why do I have to give up everything that I've built to give some of it to them? Even if, yes, we get our own country and we become balkanized or two nations, there is no peaceful way to do that. There will be no peaceful way to do that. There will be people that will justifiably say no, even on our own side. So I don't think that is a realistic option. So we have to find a way to undo 100 years, essentially, of government overreach and poisonous left-wing ideology and godlessness going through our society. Is it possible? Again, it goes back to the cancer patient. Are we too far gone? Is the cure going to ultimately kill us too? Because it's just metastasized everywhere, and we literally have to amputate everything from our body at that point. It is possible, but we still need to have hope. They may force us that we have no choice. Ultimately, that's where we are. We may be, but now again, I'm going to keep going back to it. Now, all of us are going to say no. So for the first time ever, we've gone from essentially having minimal defense, where we were fighting a war we were fighting a resistance. That's what it was. It was a resistance, whether it was political or in the culture war on YouTube. What we've seen, the change since really 2016 here on YouTube with all the different channels that you've seen with Entertainment Ripa, FNT, all these things, and all the other different culture warriors, independent media, Luke Rukowski, Tim Pool, Charlie Kirk, obviously leading the championing the cause. So it was almost like a splinter cell going into the media, the left-wing media industrial complex. And they were fighting against the empire. That's really what it was. It was a resistance movement against the left-wing ideology that had infected all of the institutions, from education to entertainment to government and corporate America. And now everybody else has realized that we're not crazy. We weren't conspiracy theorists. We weren't wrong. We were right, and we've exposed it. So that's where we are. And that's how I think we continue forward. That is how we continue forward. And we can't lose our souls. We can't lose our souls. I know I feel so much rage and anger every time I go on Twitter or on Instagram and I read all of this. We have to just call these people out. We do. There has to be, that's the price that needs to be paid first. And then whatever they do next, we have to be prepared. So everybody, you must be prepared. You must be prepared for anything that comes. This is a time of knowing where the people around you stand. Not just your friends, your family. Because I know that that's been a very painful epiphany for a lot of people this week. That they've seen that people that have been friends their entire lives and their families want harm against them just because we believe something different. And it's shocking and it is painful. So now you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared, and we really need to find our faith. If you've been on the fence about your faith, and I'm going to keep harping it, that's just the way it is. I'm not going to be afraid to talk about it. Find a church, find a community, find a study group. Read this, at least just start reading the scriptures. Open it up randomly. see where it leads you. I've done that, and the Lord inspires me. Uh, when it happens, you're going to be blown away. Find something like this. This is Prayers That Avail for Men. There's one for women, and it's got, for strength, for fear, anything that may be happening to you, just being grateful. Be grateful, have gratitude, because again, that's something, and I haven't spent enough time talking about this. Cherish the people that you love, that are in this with you. Because Charlie's family was in front of him when he was murdered. And they saw everything that happened. And that's something that nobody should ever have to experience. But that's the stark contrast. And that's something that you saw the impact. I've never seen somebody that had that impact in so many of us. And seeing grown men on the news, somebody like a Brett Baer, that you can tell it wasn't just tears, it was sobbing before he came on the air. And you could see it in everyone. Grown, strong men. And everyone in between. The sorrow and the pain. And that's the impact that we had, that was had here. And so we have to stand firm, and we can't be afraid. And so embrace those that you love. You don't know if they're going to be there tomorrow. It may not be because of something as horrible as this. It may just be crossing the street and you're in a car accident, or you have something happens, or you find out that you've got some sort of. Never take those moments for granted. Your life can change. I've not been through something that dramatic, but you can be blindsided by something, and your entire life can change. And you need to not only cherish those around you because they may not be there, but also because at this point they may be the only ones that are there. Because you will run through moments in your life where even the person next to you turns away from you. And many of your friends will turn away from you. And you'll feel alone. And those are the moments when you go back to your true friends and your family and the people that you care about, the people that you can trust. And they will be there for you. And you need to cherish them, because they may not be. You never know how long they will be there. So don't take anyone for granted. Don't take anything that you have for granted. Take the moments that you can to cherish and have gratitude for what you have, even when things are despair. Have gratitude for waking up in the morning and being alive each and every day, and having an opportunity to do something different, and to live your life, and to love, and to cherish, and to enjoy the short moment that we have on this planet, because we don't know when it's going to go away or why sometimes. And that's, and we, you can't take it for granted. You can't, because you never know when it may end. And that's something that we've learned so starkly from a woman just going home from work on public transit, who escaped war in a foreign country, murdered on her way home from work. People jogging and being, brutally attacked and murdered. What happened to Charlie just for speaking the truth and being able to, and being willing to debate people in their own, in their own term, on their own terms, really, but in a civil way. And but just don't take anyone for granted. Don't. And if on our side too, if you have people that they believe the same way, and you've got some beef, you gotta let it go. We have to learn to forgive people that we do care about, and that people that deserve the forgiveness, obviously, that really are not actively working against us or anything like that. But there are going to be people too that now have been shocked that maybe they were on the left their entire lives and genuinely now seeing what happened to Charlie this week and really being awakened by the hate and the violence that we're seeing everywhere, that now they realize. So have compassion and empathy for them and be willing to correct them and let them know that you're glad that they see it, because we need everybody, because we are in a battle for the soul of our nation and the soul of this planet. Let's be perfectly honest, because we see the evil that has consumed other countries to an even worse extent than what we see here in the United States already. And so we do have to be a beacon of hope, but there's going to be hard times ahead, and it's going to test all of us. It's going to test our faith, our resolve, and we're going to lose people that we love. We're going to lose friendships, all of that. We really are. And it's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible. It's going to hurt. But this is why the message is so important and why freedom of speech is so important too, because it exposes, it is the light that exposes the darkness. As awful as it is to read the things that we're reading, to hear the things that we're hearing, and to see what we've seen, we have to. We can't turn a blind eye to it. We can't. We have to face evil and understand what it is and stand firmly against it. And again, I'm going to keep saying it. It's going to be no more. No more. No more. We're not going to allow them to do this anymore. September 11th was this week. September 11th was yesterday. It's been 24 years since September 11th. I remember that I was in my freshman year of high school, and it was like any other. It was like any other morning. I've lived in Florida for so long, so you don't have seasons or anything like that. It's just fall is when you go back to school, and nobody likes it because of that. And I think I was in, forgot which class I was. I think I was in technology. That's what it was called. And it was one of the few classrooms where we had TVs, and I just remember, and a lot of computers. I just remember hearing about, that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. And then a second one. Because, at first we didn't know. We didn't see it live. And then we saw some of the videos. And then living in South Florida, you have so many New York transplants. It's probably like 40% of the population. Is like a Jewish New Yorker. Or like Hispanic New Yorker or something like that in South Florida. That's just how it is. They bail out and they come back and they come to South Florida. But so many people had connections to New York that their parents just came, and I remember the school was a ghost town, but my high school was very close to Fort Lauderdale Airport. So you get used to every, like minute, 30 seconds, minute, depending on how busy it is, of passenger planes flying over. And just at around 10:30 when all of a sudden it's just silence. And that's when you really knew that something, it all felt so surreal, because there are moments in history you watch, like old videos, you watch newsreels from World War II, documentaries about Vietnam. The Challenger explosion is really one of the first live events that really, people saw, happen before their eyes at the moment it happened, and it was shocking. And then you have September 11th, and it just felt surreal. When the first plane went in, obviously everybody just thought it was a freak accident. But then when the second plane hit, and then we heard about the Pentagon. Everybody knew. We all knew that that was it. The U.S. was at war, and it was never going to be the same again. And Sav J, thank you for the 5. And I remember I usually took the bus home. As a freshman, I didn't have a license or anything like that, but I always rode the bus throughout high school. I didn't get a car until I got my first job after I graduated. But I remember my parents picked me up that day. We went to a Sam's Club, and on all the TVs, it was just playing everything. And that's when I really saw it. And it was people jumping out of the buildings. I remember that's something that will always stay with me. And it really was afterwards too. The level of despair, and I feel like this was the only other event in my life that felt like what we felt this week. And it's almost crazy to compare, because obviously it's an event that thousands of our country, men and women, were killed versus one person. But there's just an impact in the spirit where you feel like something in the society has changed. And sometimes they may have a different physical magnitude, but they have that same force behind them. And I'm sure this is how a lot of people felt in the 60s. But that sadness, that despair, I remember I watched MTV all the time back then, back when they still used to play music, and even MTV started doing it. There was no escape. But then we saw unity. For some time, we did. And I don't think that we're ever, right now, in the near term, Patriot from Warsaw, awesome, I'll check that out. But, it's, I don't think that we're going to see that unity now, and I don't know how long or if we'll ever see that type of unity again. I think that we can strive for a unity now against people that don't want this anymore, that don't want this evil to permeate, and against the people that are saying no. That's where we have to unify. And again, we have to stop the infighting that we've got, here, bitter things about, just stupid crap, that we may nitpick about. We've got to be strong, because we're really standing against forces of chaos and evil. And it's not just, it's the left, it's Islamic extremism, it's elites that want to take everything away, communism. Those are the forces that we're fighting against. They're forces of evil. They really are. And I'm glad that that President Trump called it out, because for too long we've been doing the both sides, the whataboutism, and I'm sick and tired of it, because there is a truth. It is not my truth. It is not subjective. There is a truth. There is good and evil, and there is a clear delineation between those things. There are men and women. There are physical realities. There are immutable laws of nature and nature's God that cannot be questioned, and that is ultimately what we stand for, and they are against it. And those are the forces of chaos and the enemy. The enemy sows chaos from the start. That's how it has always been. And we have to be strong. From the beginning, we fell. We live in a fallen world. So at the same time, we can't be fatalistic. Because we're people of faith, like I said, I don't know if this is a bad time or the end time. Nobody ever knows that. Only the Lord knows that. There are a lot of things that feel prophetic and feel like the times of Noah. Everything from the UAP stuff to the war in the Middle East to the evil ideology that's spreading, even transgenderism, they, thems. That's like demonic stuff, man. And but everybody, I'm seeing it though, because You feel it in the spirit. You're seeing kind of a revival. People are going to faith en masse because they see the emptiness and the nihilism. You even see it in some intellectuals that are saying the world was better off when we had people of faith that were standing up against a lot of the chaos that we've sown, because it stood against it. Again, we have free will, but that's not freedom to do whatever we want. It's again the Constitution. And one of my favorite clips of Charlie is how he really makes the case for why the United States was founded as a Christian nation, even if we didn't necessarily live up to that standard today. Because I know some people are like, oh, well, we're not really a Christian nation at this point. Well, we've lost our way. There's no doubt. And we always do. That's what happens. It's by the grace of God that we're saved, because we're always going to fall. We're always going to sin. We're always going to fail, but we have to get back up and we have to do better each time. Nobody is perfect except for the Lord and Jesus Christ. That's it. Nobody else. That's it. And that's built in. But the difference between good and evil is what really starts the slope is when you continually do the wrong thing and you know it and you don't care and you feel no remorse for it, no repentance. That is true evil. You're always going to fall. You're going to falter. You will. We all do. If you don't repent and you don't, and that's where the left fell. The left, and you can see it through their compassion and how they try to show empathy. The left took the foundations of Christianity and Judeo-Christian principles, the morality, and trying to, have empathy and love towards people, but they took away everything else. They took away God from it. They took away Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit. They took away everything that's involved with that, and then they removed having to repent for your sins. So you can do whatever you want. People have to show you compassion, but you never have to feel bad for going against nature, for doing bad things, and for being indulgent and being depraved or gluttonous. You never do. It's so they took half of the moral foundation that we believe in, and they took away all of the consequence from it. And then they try to use that against us. And they've convinced a lot of people. There's a lot of churches out there that are extremely weak. They are the Pottery Barn churches. They're too afraid to teach the consequences of actions, that you can be lost. It's true. It doesn't mean, look, you bring people in with love. I disagree with some people with name calling and these things, and I love them. I don't name call people when it comes to faith. If somebody's interested or you want to bring them into the fold, you do. Now, if they're mocking you and they're really antagonizing you, and you know that they're not acting in good faith, then of course you got to call them out at every step. But because somebody's there, or you got to bring people in with love and show them that this is the way. This is the way. Before it was called Christianity, it was called the way. So that this is the way, and bring them in with that love and compassion, and then hopefully they'll stick around and figure it out. But at the same time, there are consequences. You can't sugarcoat it, and that's the problem. Too many churches, too many people of faith sugarcoat everything. There are consequences to all of this. Just because Christ died for our sins and fulfilled the law doesn't mean that there isn't still justice against evil in this world, or that it is wrong to have justice against evil. That is not. It doesn't say in the commandments, thou shalt not kill. It says, thou shalt not murder. Self-defense in times of justice and vanquishing evil. There are times when you have to use force. There's no doubt. And I don't think that's not a sin. But this is where, and so we can't, they've tried to take advantage of us. That's what they want. The Lord doesn't want us to be lambs and sheep led to the slaughter. At the same time, we're not, vengeance is his, but we must still stand our ground and be strong and firm. We can't let evil overcome us. And just because at the end of the day, we believe that there will be a final salvation and a final judgment. That doesn't mean that we don't sit around here and do nothing, because we need to bring as many people to the light and away from evil as possible. You know, that is our duty, not just as good human beings, as Christians and all of that, but just as decent people. We can't give up on everybody. We do have to bring people in, but we're not blind anymore either. So this is the difference. You have to be strong and firm in your faith. Be compassionate to those who embrace the message, but those that don't want to destroy you, you have no, there's no mercy there. You know, that's just the way that it is. So I didn't plan any of this. That this is the tangent that I was going to go on. I didn't know how long this was going to be. You know I normally have gaming streams on Fridays, but this is something that I had to do, and I was already prepared to discuss everything else that had been happening in the world, and to discuss more about September 11th and the meaning behind all of that. But this is the world that we live in, and this is life. We never know what is going to happen, and again, we're blessed for every day that our eyes are open, that we open our eyes in the morning and take our first breaths, and that we're conscious of it. We're blessed, just like the days that we were born. Our days are always numbered from the day that we're born. They are. A young man was taken away from us at 31 years old because of what he believed in, and because he was not afraid to stand up for it in a way that was kind and decent. So we always have to be grateful for every single moment that we have on this earth. Embrace what we love. Stand for the truth, not our truth, the truth, because there is a truth out there. And embrace those that you love, and know that we're not alone. We are not alone. None of us are alone. We aren't. Even when we're physically alone, we are not alone. You know, we're never alone, and now we really know that there are more of us than ever. And so, even though we feel rage, anger, despair, and sadness, we now know the truth of the situation that we are in. And even though ignorance can be bliss, now we're not blind, and now we don't need to be afraid, because the thing that really drives fear, the core of all fear, is really the unknown. What's going to happen tomorrow? What will happen to me? What are they going to do? Will I be able to stand up? Will I be able to succeed? Will I be able to do this? Doubt. It is the fear of the unknown that is the crux of everything. Now we know. We know where they stand. We know where we stand. Now we don't need to be afraid of that anymore. We don't. We don't need to be afraid of it. We know what we face. Now we can stand strong. We can prepare. We can tell them no. We can stand together. We can embrace our brothers and sisters in the cause, our mothers and fathers, our friends and family, bring people back from the precipice, push back against those that want to push us over the edge, and stand firm in your faith and what you believe in, and do not be afraid to call them out or speak it out loud. Don't. We got this. We can do it. We have got this. So I'm going to be back with rants, because I can't stop doing this. I can't. For a long time, I will be perfectly honest, I was lost. I'm not going to go into details. Many of you know, but I was lost. And I did not know how to do this. My heart was not in it. I did not know how to stand and do live streams on my own. I didn't know. I really, and for a long time, I didn't feel it in my heart. I had fun doing it, but doing the political streams, talking about these things, it weighed heavily on me. And with everything that had happened to me, which is trivial compared to what we're seeing in the world today, but this is what happens in life. I didn't. I just it was I didn't. It wasn't in me, and you saw how I struggled, and I came back and forth and did this, and I had the inconsistencies, and there are a lot of things that I don't want to talk about. Um, but my faith is what brought me through, and the people that love me, my family, my closest friends, and then ultimately, you just get to a point where you move forward, you you forgive, but you allow yourself to be stronger, and you have to start finding who you are and what you stand for and what you believe in, and know that you are never alone, even if you're physically alone, even if people leave your life and things change. You're not alone. You've got the Lord, and and with Him, you'll always win. If you have faith, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have moments of sadness and despair, where you're not sure how to move forward or what the point is. But you have to have faith, and you have to find the meaning. And now again, sometimes you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it because you have to, and that's where I feel. And I never started streaming because I wanted to do it. I mean, a lot of you guys saw me because I started streaming and playing video games online. And then I remember when so many of you found out that I did a political stream, and I'd been doing political streams before for years before, any of the gaming stuff. I became a Second Amendment advocate, and that's really what drove me, into politics, not being afraid. I wasn't on social media, and I wasn't afraid to do it. And part of it was because I wasn't doing it alone. But I always had the drive, and I always had that in me, and I was always encouraged, and I wanted to do it. And for a long time I felt like I lost the identity, and now I think I know what I need to do again, and I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing the rants. I'm not going to be afraid to talk about my faith and to talk about what I stand for, and trying to help inspire who I can to not be afraid and to stand up. We need to be good and virtuous people. I think as men, we need to be role models, and we need to stand firm and strong. And as men, I understand the anger that we can feel and what's happened in society. For a long time, I didn't feel that because life was great and everything's fantastic. And then, but when you have time for introspection, and you see how, as men, a lot of times you're just kind of expected, you just got to man up. Like, that's it. Nobody really cares. Nobody has sympathy. And so that can be tough, but we have to be here for each other. And women, we love you too. There are great women out there that support men. But, a lot of times this is because weak men did not stand firm. We have to be leaders again, gentlemen. And we can't be angry. We can't want vengeance, blame women for all of our problems or all these things, and feminism. No, we have to stand strong and firm, and we have to set the example of leadership without hate and anger and woe is me. But we do have to support each other, and we do have to understand that we are human. We still have feelings, and we feel that pain, and so, but we, and that's not being weak or anything like that. It's being cognizant of it. But we do ultimately have to stand firm and set the example and be leaders, and be worthy of leadership too. We have to be worthy of leadership where we stand, and that means being moral, being people of our word, standing for truth. And this applies to everybody, not just men. We all have to be people of integrity that stand up for these principles that Charlie and so many others stand up for, and they've ultimately died for. And we can't be afraid of it, and we do have to pull ourselves out of it. But you're not alone, and it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel pain. It's okay to feel despair and emotion. So that's it. That's all you can do. That's all you can do, man. That's what I've learned. So that's it. So I'm back. I'll do more rants. I don't know what day they'll be yet. I'm gonna do more streams in general because I've enjoyed doing this a lot more, and you know, I I've got a little bit of a different perspective than everybody else because I always approach this from more of this angle, not necessarily the gaming and entertainment. And I love it. Look, I had a fantastic time. I've loved that you guys have been very supportive about my going back on Epic Verse. I love Mike, Josiah, even Ben. Chaz is awesome. Since I met him on Epic Verse, he's great. He and his wife are awesome. So I love those guys. The opportunity. Phil is great. It's so great to see Phil from just being Project Egg Roll in so many different chats, and to see how he's added his voice to the discussion and where he's going. Phil is awesome. Love him. So it's I've enjoyed that and the levity that we have there and the fun. But, you know, one of the things that I've really appreciated that I've seen the last couple of years, Josiah and Mike especially, and I know this about them, are men of faith, and they've been so great and so supportive. And Mike is crazy, says crazy stuff, and he may yell and do all this stuff. But man, there are a few men that I know that have as much faith, and that are as good and that care as Mike. He's a real one. He'll take the shirt off of his back to help you. God bless him. So he's fantastic. Josiah's a great man of faith too. I don't know as much about with Ben and Chaz, but they're awesome, you know, and supportive, and I know what they stand for as well. They're great. And even Mazda, that dog yesterday, was ridiculous. But you know, I enjoy the opportunity, and I'm glad that you guys appreciate that I can be serious and talk about these things and give you guys that perspective where I get a little bit deeper. It's not about entertainment for me all the time. So, you know, I don't necessarily on my own channels talk about it. I do my video game streams, but talk about entertainment the same way, because I've always been kind of on the upstream of that a little bit, on the political aspect. But I enjoy the opportunity to do both, and I'm back to do it. And I've known that you know, I think very few people in their lives get to find things that they're passionate about and get to do them as careers. This is definitely not a career. It's not like I appreciate all the super chats, you know, that what we get there, but you know, it's not. I never did it for that, and I definitely couldn't live off of it anyway. But it's the opportunity to have my voice. It's the opportunity to, when I was able to meet a lot of you at different events, whether it was through Second Amendment events and some of the public speaking that I was able to do, which is crazy. Again, I was just some dude that played video games, got my degree in engineering, worked with computers most of the time, and I like guns and video games and science fiction, and got the opportunity to do a lot of cool stuff and be on cool platforms, and been on live streams where like 20,000 people were watching one time, and that was wild. And I never I'm blessed to have done some of those things, even if I never get to do them again. It was cool. And but what was really cool is when I got to meet a lot of you in person, and you know, even if it's just one or two people, and I can't imagine how the impact that Charlie had. I'm not even comparing myself to that, but it is so cool to see us come together and say like, man, I heard you say that and I really appreciate it, and it inspired me. Or even you guys in the chat developing friendships and talking to one another, joking around, building those friendships and relationships, and seeing that in person where you guys have gotten to meet each other and putting names to faces, and seeing just normal everyday people come together. And maybe it was because of our love for video games, or making fun of ridiculous things, or our political beliefs, or just liking cool guns and believing in our freedom of speech. uh, seeing it in person has really been what's the difference. And seeing you guys in the chat, appreciate it. And honestly, even as I've changed and I'm not afraid to talk about faith or anything like that, that I've been blessed that you guys have, a lot of people have been very supportive of that, and I appreciate all of you. And hopefully that I've seen a lot of you go on to do your own streams and to go on Twitter and do all that stuff, and that's awesome. Like I said, seeing guys like Phil and do it too, that was always the goal, right? When I started doing this years ago in the gun space first, it was always really important for me to have all the gaming stuff that I had in the background, because I wanted people to see a different example and something different. You know, not just like the same old regular people that you see with guns. Somebody that was, even though I'm not all about the race stuff or anything like that and the identity politics, but just to show everybody, like, not everybody's just like some generic white dude or anything like this, or Hispanics aren't all liberals and anti-gun, or people that are into guns or conservative. They're not anti-video game like a lot of these people. They blame every time something happens. The left will blame guns and the right will blame violent video games or something like that. And so it was almost an all of the above catch-all, and to show good interactions too between men and women and how people should behave and all of that. And that was always the goal, to set that example and to show people a different perspective. And that's what I always loved doing it. And honestly, becoming part of gaming channels and all these other things, that was always a Trojan horse. Like, I'm not even gonna lie about it. It was always to show people a different perspective. And so I always appreciated when I had the opportunities to be on different platforms and on different streams with other people, that people would come to this channel and they'd be like, holy cow, I never expected that over here you're talking about like woke crap in video games, and here you've gone like all in about history and your rights and the what is going on in the world, current events, and how it all comes together. And that's the coolest part to me. And seeing so many people that are like, wait a second, we can talk about all of these things. You can talk about all of the things here. You can talk about all the things. And that's what I always wanted. So I appreciate you for hanging out and for sticking around for things like that as I've figured it out, and just as I go off on these crazy tangents, because I've got ADD, I'm not even gonna lie. And I think that part of the time, that's why I'm seeing so many different things at once. And you guys know I get my tangents. It's literally a lot of times the conspiracy board in the back, the meme with like Charlie Day. It's the Charlie Day where he's like going crazy and making all the conspiracy connections. That's like going on in my head as I go on these rants, and it's never scripted. I never know where I'm going to go. I just know, like, well, these are like the three things that I'm going to talk about. Sometimes I don't even get there, and sometimes another thing pops in there. And a lot of times as I start ranting, a path opens up where I remember something else, or you guys say something and it brings it all together. And somehow it becomes something coherent that everybody's like, cool, like I'll get behind that. And that's kind of how I do things. So I never script it, I never want to, and I just kind of go extemporaneous. Even when I've done like public speaking and all that stuff, like I just don't think that way. If I have to write a speech or something like that, I've done it before, but I don't really stick to it at all, because that's not how my mind works. And that's pretty much how it is. So yeah, Rolo's rants will be back. When we need them. I'm not going to shirk around it. I'm going to play a lot more video games too. You're going to see a lot more of me. The thing that has driven me a little bit crazy, and I see it all the time, is everybody's like, where have you been? I was like, I never left. I was like, I did this before I started streaming with people, and I've done it after. So I've always been here ever since the Puerto Rican pistolero has appeared here. So I'll be back probably next week with another rant. We'll see where everything goes. Hopefully, hopefully where we hold back from the edge, but we need to be prepared. Get training, learn how to defend yourself, purchase a firearm if you don't already, and train with it, become proficient in it. Have situational awareness. What happened to Arena on that train? You can't have blinders on. If you're out in public, you can't. You have to put yourself in a defensive position. Put yourself near exits. Make sure that you have plans of escape. Nobody can get behind you. You're aware of everybody that's around. And yes, you have to profile them and make a threat assessment on everything. There's nothing wrong with that. And if anybody says that you're being bigoted, racist, or anything like that, doesn't matter. Even if you see some sketchy dude, doesn't matter what color they are, or anything like that. Use common sense. That's just the way it is. And sketchy people look sketchy. That's just how it works. And if people are going to get offended by that, they can get offended by that. We're not gonna bullshit around it. We aren't. I don't get bothered by people. Even when I was younger, just by being a dude, sometimes, you'd see women don't want to be around you, or they make you feel awkward because you're just walking, and then you walk faster than somebody else. And as a man, sometimes women will look at you like, is this dude stalking me or drinking me? And then you're all flustered, and you're like, let me just get past this person. So, that's just the way it is. So, you have to have situational awareness and have grace of that. And if people are looking out for their safety, who cares if they cross the street when you're there or anything like that, or they turn you, when you go to restaurants, you go to public places, make sure you know where the emergency exits are. Make sure that you can see the entrances. Make sure you're prepared and that your family's prepared and you have a plan. Always have that, that security awareness. And it's not a paranoia. It's not a paranoia at all. It's just being safe. It's like when you're driving a car, right? You're looking around constantly because anything can come and sideswipe you at that moment. That's how you have to live. You have to live with an awareness, because there are predators out there that are hunting you. They are hunting you, either because they want to steal your things, because they hate what you stand for, or because they are downright insane and evil. And there is nothing that motivates them other than that evil that has consumed them. A mindless rage. You've just got to be prepared. And don't let anybody shame you for carrying a gun or anything like that. That's one of the things that is one of my favorite things to do, because for some reason, you guys know that I'm into guns. You guys, now it's funny because everybody, a lot of people, when I meet them in person, they're like, man, I can't mess with you, Rolo. He's got these guns and he knows how. I'm like, bro, I'm not like John Wick gonna come out here or start things. If anything, when you know that you have the ability to defend yourself, you have the responsibility to hold yourself at a higher standard, because you know that you can be dangerous on demand. And I'm by no means a badass. In fact, I understand the fact that there are many cases where I'm not the biggest dude in the world, I'm not the strongest dude in the world, and I don't have the skills of a lot of these people. I'll get my ass kicked by a lot of people. And if you've got multiple people attacking you, you could be the most badass dude in the world and you'll still get your ass kicked if you get jumped and nobody knows. And as somebody that carries a firearm concealed, you learn that anybody can carry a firearm concealed. How many people that don't know me, that know me outside of this space, and that don't know I've done YouTube and advocated for, individual rights and the Second Amendment, self-defense and all that stuff for years in my normal day job, when they find out, because I'll let it out. I usually don't talk about these other things, but I'll let it out. Yeah, that I believe in the Second Amendment. I carry a firearm. People are like, you carry a gun? You're such a nice guy. I was like, what does being a decent, nice person have to do with carrying a gun? That's just like insurance, man. And you got to be able to defend against evil. There's no, and then it's cool because it's an icebreaker. And ladies, you have a secret power when it comes to this, because there's nothing that really disarms people literally, pun intended there, than if you carry a firearm and you go to your friends who are women too and you say you carry a firearm, and then they think that you're crazy, but then you explain it to them. You do it for your safety, you do it for love. You carry a firearm for love too. You love your life, you love the life of your family, and you love the life of other strangers sometimes that you're willing to defend if you happen to be the good guy or good girl with a gun there. And so that is why you carry a gun. I didn't come up with that. I did not, credit to no credit to me with that phrase, but that's why a lot of people carry. You carry for love, and you can't be afraid of it. And it doesn't mean that you're fearful either, just for wanting to protect yourself and having self-awareness and awareness of your environment, especially nowadays. You have to. So defend yourself, have awareness, get trained, prepare for dark times that may happen. So get your supplies of food, that can last for months. Find out who your true friends are and who you can trust in your family. Now more than ever, and it's okay. Now it is okay to shit test people, if that's the term that you want to use. Now it's okay to test people. You can what would it be called? You can virtue test people at this point. I think you have to. It is almost to a point where you have to ask certain people, like, what do you think about what happened to Charlie Kirk? And depending on what their answer is, you will have to evaluate that relationship. And there's nothing wrong with that, because anybody who took glee in a decent human being being murdered and assassinated in cold blood in front of his family is a person that you probably don't want in your life, because you don't know what they're capable of, and they're definitely somebody that you cannot trust, because even if they may not do something evil like that, you know that they have no courage and they have nothing that they stand on that is good. And so if the crazies come out, they will definitely turn you into them and turn them against you out of their own fear, because they stand for nothing. And they've allowed that fear to consume them. The fear of their own side consumes them. And that's also what we're seeing. I think that now there are some prominent people, politicians, and some of the elites and these left-wing streamers that are kind of starting to get it. A lot of it is fear. And it's not just fear of retribution from the right. It's fear of their own side, because they understand the monsters that they've unleashed here. And a lot of them did it from greed and bandwagon jumping, and that's their own type of evil, right? But it wasn't this demonic force. They did it for these human, basic reasons that are embedded in all of us: selfishness and greed and jealousy, envy. And then they saw the evil that unleashes, that these emotions that are common in humans, they are, but you can see how, if unchecked, even a simple basic sin will lead to a snowball effect that leads to people being driven to commit evil acts. And that's why you have to nip them in the bud. So again, we have free will, we have freedom, but ultimately exercising restraint is the ultimate test of freedom, because you have to be able to restrain yourself from wanting to have vengeance, from wanting to indulge in vices, whether that is, the things that we see today, like, explicit websites, drugs, all of those things that we see that are consuming our society. You have to have restraint. So, yeah, we believe in freedom, but without having a moral code and the ability to show the restraint and that maturity, then it just falls into chaos. And again, that's what the founders, that's why they said a republic. Benjamin Franklin, when was asked, what type of government have you given us? A republic, if you can keep it. Our Constitution gives us so much freedom compared to any other society in existence on earth. But we have to have the morality to be able to handle that freedom. Because just because you can doesn't mean that you should. And you have to show that restraint. And that is why we stand against anarchy too, because you have to have that restraint. So yes, you got the freedom to do everything in theory, you do. But you shouldn't. But you should not. So that's where we're at. And thank you all for watching me and hanging out. Please share the show. Let people know that, yes, I'm here. You're going to see me around more often, obviously. I'm going to try to make it every Thursday if we stay up so late with those tier lists. So, and hopefully we'll get some of those guys on some streams, some gaming streams and things like that. I need to get the rants up to a point where maybe I can start having some guests again, and it's not going to be the people that you guys normally are used to. I'll go deep into my bench of the political and Second Amendment personalities that I've been blessed to know over the years, and try to get back into that and get that perspective going. And there are a lot of other things that I want to talk about here. Puerto Rico has kind of become the epicenter for everything that is happening in Trump's war against the cartels, and it's been wild. It has been wild. We've got Predator drones or Reaper drones with Hellfire missiles like down the street from here. The Navy's operating, a fleet equivalent to what was defending Israel here in the Caribbean, and we're seeing bases being used that have been out of commission for a long time, and it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild to see the geopolitical space happen here, and the fact that like Puerto Rico is directly like we're due north, like straight, go like 0 degrees on the line on the compass, and we're there, straight north from like the capital of Venezuela. And so I don't feel in danger, but now that this is becoming another epicenter, it is possible. Like, what would Nicolas Maduro do? Would he fire, Iranian Shahed drones towards Puerto Rico? They get shot down right away. But it's just wild to see what's going on here, and to see so many things in the world changing so fast. And we have to talk about it. We have to talk about all of it. And we can't be afraid. We've got to circle the wagons, but we also do have to make sure that, unlike the left, we do hold our leaders accountable. So when they falter, we can't forget about the Epstein list. We can't forget about all the other things going on in the world, and we have to stand strong. But we do face a massive crisis from within right now, and that is the biggest threat that we face more than anything else. It is the rot within our own country and how we reconcile and deal with it. So that's where we're at. Thank you all. I'm going to leave you again with scripture. And I think this is important, and I'll discuss it a little bit here. We're going to go to a famous one that I try to start every day with this, and I would encourage you to as well. Ephesians 6:10, the armor of God. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. Stand therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, with which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints. And for me that utterance may be given to me, that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that in it I may speak boldly as I ought to speak. the words of Paul in Ephesians 6:10. And you'll notice that everything that you put on in the armor is protecting you from the front, because that's where we are. We're moving forward and the Lord has our back. So he's protecting our back and the armor is protecting our front, and we're moving forward and we're going to tell evil no going on. Good luck. God bless all of you. God bless America. God bless Charlie Kirk and look over his family. You all are fantastic. I'll be back this weekend for more gaming streams. Stay tuned, but take care, everybody, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.